Okay, it's time to put the finishing touches on this deck we've been working on. We're going to add a couple vinyl fence panels to the sides. Going to start out, this vinyl fence panel does not require any support. It is meant to go directly into the ground, so I'm going to cut the part that goes into the ground off. So I've got it marked where I want my height to end up being. I'm going to go a few inches above the deck so there's a little bit of airflow underneath. So that's where I made my mark, and it's going to straddle the side of the deck. The first post that I'm going to put up will also support the railing, so that will have a 4x4 post in it just to support the railing. And I'll show you that here in just a moment. Let me get this cut all the way around. Now I'm using a fine-tooth carbide blade, and it cuts through the vinyl quite nicely and gives a nice finish. So here is where the post is going to go, and again I'm using this 4x4 just to support my railing, and then I'm going to put some carriage bolts. Got holes drilled through the side of the deck, and I'm marking my spot on my post. I'll take that out, and then we can see the holes here, and I'll go ahead and drill my hole for my carriage bolt. That's what's going to hold the post to the side of the deck, and that will secure the railing and hold my sleeve in place. Okay, so I've got my hole drilled, so I'll slide my post sleeve, and I'll have to drill the holes in that as well. I'm going to leave this open here for my rails. Slide that down. I'm going to measure for my rails. Now the rails have a metal piece inside, at least the bottom rail does, so I'll take that out and I'll cut that separately. And that makes this just a piece of vinyl, so I'll cut that with the same blade that I used on the post. Get it marked to my measurement, and then I can cut that rail down to size. Then I'll mark the metal support and cut that down to size as well. Then I can slide the metal part of the rail back into the vinyl, and it's the same length. Now I've got the top rail as well. That one does not have a metal support, so that one gets cut without removing anything. So now I'm going to put my carriage bolts in. I've got my post set where I want it. It's right up against the railing. So I'll tap the carriage bolts in. And then I want the sleeve pulled over to give enough room for the rail to connect. There's little tabs on the rail. I'll slide those into the post and pull the post over as far as I can. Now this is the picket, and there's a little sliding sleeve on the very first and the very last, so I'll put that on, slide this in the rail, make sure it's centered, and then all the rest of the pickets slide in like a tongue and groove. I'll just put one in after the other, and they slide up next to the previous piece until I get all the way to the end. Now I've got my other post cut to size, so I'll snap that into place. And there's already a piece of 2x4 affixed to the house for this one, but I'm going to take this block at the bottom You can see it fits just in between the post on each side. And I'm going to screw that down to the deck just to give the bottom of the post something to hold on to keep it from kicking out, and additional support. So I'll just screw that down to the decking, and then I can lift my post over top of the block that I just put in, and then I'll also screw it to the 2x4 that's secured to the house, just for extra support. So I've got my post in. I can continue putting the pickets together. And when I get to the end, I have to put this sleeve on, and that's where it's going to end up. However, as you see, this picket is too wide, so I'm going to need to rip it down here. So I've ripped it down, put my slider on, and you can see it fits pretty good. That little gap, you can pull that slider apart and it will fill in that gap. So now I put the top rail over top of all the pickets. And then this fence panel comes with a piece of lattice that goes above the top rail here. Before I put that in, I'm going to screw in this post to the house, the 2x4 that's mounted to the house. And then I can slide my lattice into the slot. I've already cut it down to size, and I'll slide it into the slat that is on the top rail and the post. This fence panel was made by Freedom. I picked it up at the local hardware store, in case you were wondering which kind of fence I was using here. So I've got my cap or top rail that has a slot in it. That just slides down over top of the lattice. There's a slot all the way across. And I just work it in all the way from one side to the other. Okay, now that I have the fence panel all put together, I want to make sure that the posts are plumb, and then I'll go underneath the deck and put some flat washers, and then put some nuts on the carriage bolts that I drove through the post to secure it, and then tighten that down using my impact wrench. Luckily it fits in there, so that makes it a whole lot easier. Then I'm going to secure the stairs to the 4x4 post that I just bolted to the deck. Now on the other side of the deck, I'm going to use a 4x4 as my spacer, so that's how far I want it off the deck. And then this is the distance that I'm going to cut this side down. I've got two marks. This is going to overlap the deck for my support, and I'm going to use a 2x6 that I ripped down to support this post, because this post is meant to go in the ground. So I'm having to manufacture what I need to support it. So that's the length. Then here's where my 2x6 is going to go. So I'll mark that all the way down, and I'll leave that part to cover the 2x6 on the side of the deck. I'll show you that here in a moment. Let me get this marked and cut, and then we'll work out the details on the side of the deck, and I'll show you how I'm going to support this post. So I've got my rip cuts done. So now I'm going to remove the part that's going to be overlapping the deck. And the circular saw doesn't quite get into the corners all the way. I want a nice square cut. So So I'll use my jigsaw to get into the corners. So now I've got a small piece of post remaining, and that's going to lay over the side of the deck like this. And I'll put a 2x6 that I ripped down on the side. So I'll rip the 2x6 down, and I'll put that about 4 foot high and bolt that onto the side of the deck, and that should support the post of my fence panel. It slides right into, a nice tight fit, slides right into the post. I can put a couple of screws in here just to hold it in place for now. And then I'll take my sleeve and slide it over once I get these holes drilled here. Then I'll put some carriage bolts through there. That'll support each of my posts. Now I have to notch out this part of the 2x6 because that's where my rails are going to go. And with that in there, it wouldn't let my rails latch in. So I have to remove a little bit of wood so that my rails will latch in and hold into place. So you can see where it's cut out there, and it matches up with the hole once I get the post sleeve on there. So now I can put my carriage bolts in. I've drilled my vinyl, tap that into place, and I'm not going to tighten those down until I get all of my pickets in place so I can put my bottom rail in. And you can see it slides in now that I've cut a pocket in the 4x4. And again, up against the house, there's a 2x4 that was there from the previous panel that I left, and I'll use that to secure my post on the side closest to the house. So I take my pickets and just slide them into the slot and push them over tongue and groove. Now this one will have to be ripped here, so I'll rip that one down, and then I'll put my side piece on. It's a little bit thinner, and then slide it into place. And I have the fence panel part done. Put the top of the pickets, top rail on. Get that into place, pull the post over, and then I put my lattice in the slot of the post and the rail. And then I can add my cap or top rail, and it helps to have the post a little bit loose at this point. And I'll plumb it up once I get this all locked together. It just snaps over once I get it. There we go. Snaps into place. Then I can start my next run. This side has 2 panels that I'm going to do. It's a little bit wider. The other side had the stairs coming off. So I've got that all together. I put my little slider piece on the end, and I've got my end piece over here. That should slide in there. And then I can put my top rail over top of the pickets. Get that pushed into place, locked into the post, and then put my lattice into the slotted parts of the post and the rail, and then snap my top rail into the post and the lattice. It all snaps together. Once I get this all together, make sure everything is plumb, and I'll go underneath the deck and put some flat washers over top of my carriage bolts, and then put nuts on there, and I'll tighten those down. Looks like I can get my impact in here. This one I will not be able to get my impact into. So this one I'm going to have to wrench each one of the carriage bolts down, the nuts for the carriage bolts. So I've got it all put together now. Let's take a look at what we have. We've got new steps, privacy panel, all new decking, kept the same railing, it was in good shape, and another privacy panel. So this is redecking a deck. Hope you've enjoyed. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.